Greetings, family. Welcome back to my channel. Family, tonight I'm going to venture to put on my tinfoil hat and make a few assertions about Hurricane Melissa, which recently devastated the island of Jamaica. I didn't really believe that this storm was an act of nature. I was in a live stream watching some of the devastation before the storm actually touched down in Jamaica. And it occurred to me that this storm was very unnatural. I know many persons are out there saying, we've seen these types of storms time and again, but this happened to be the most powerful storm to make landfall in Jamaica and in the Caribbean. And so I recalled that there were several videos of NASA testing the RS-25 rocket engine in Tennessee. And these videos are from like 7 years ago, 10 years ago, but they featured the firing of this test engine, which actually produces rain clouds, right? And so they turned the machine on. I'm going to have some videos at the end of this video, which will illustrate what I'm saying. But when they produced this rain cloud, within 1 hour of producing the water vapor, the clouds began to actually rain, right? And we know that this has been going on for at least a decade, probably even longer than that. But I know from my recollection, it's been at least 10 years, a very provable fact that NASA can use the rocket engines, which normally propel their space shuttles into the air, to actually produce clouds that will ultimately rain, actual rain. And so they are purportedly a mixture of hydrogen and oxygen, which condense into a cloud form and actually produce rain afterwards. And oftentimes when I look at these devastating storms that hit the Caribbean, it always occurs to me that when these people produce these rain producing clouds, that we don't really know what happens to these storm systems after they produce them, right? And so it has always occurred to me that it's possible that these storms actually continue traveling along a certain trajectory. And, if they're traveling over tropical waters, it's possible that they will gain strength. It's possible that they will become thunderstorms, tropical storms, and possibly even hurricanes. I saw a video that a drone pilot shot of Hurricane Melissa. They actually flew a drone into the center of Hurricane Melissa. And it was really a spectacular sight to see that in the center of this massive hurricane, this Category 5 hurricane, that there was like this snow white, thick cloud swirling in a circle. And in the center of the circle, there were some even darker clouds hovering above the water. But essentially, that was like the eye of the storm, right? And they even showed that at certain points, the eye of the storm had lightning. These were satellite images that showed that in the area that is supposed to be the calm of the storm, there was lightning flashing, which could be seen from an aerial view. So, family, I didn't really want to go the conspiracy route because persons will always tend to consider these types of thoughts to be conspiratorial. But it's actually a provable fact. There's something called the RS-25 engine, which is in Tennessee, which can actually produce clouds that will rain. I remarked at the path of Hurricane Melissa, and we saw that if you look at the track of the storm actually did like a spiral. It was heading towards the west on a certain trajectory. Then it suddenly spun around in a circle. If you look at the hurricane trajectory, it actually made a circle, parked in front of Jamaica, doing like less than 1 mile per hour. In terms of this traveling speed, I'm not talking about the swirling winds, which were like 225 miles per hour. I'm talking about its actual travel time was less than 1 mile per hour. The storm parked in front of Jamaica menacingly, and before it even made landfall, the actual destruction had already started to take place. Trees were toppled, power lines were toppled. There was catastrophic flooding before the storm made landfall, right? In fact, there were like 7 deaths before the storm made it there. And so I said all of that to say it didn't appear to me to be a common storm by any stretch of the imagination. You know, it didn't appear to be a common storm at all. And as of late, the last few hurricanes sort of caused me to start wondering, if they can manipulate um, hydrogen and oxygen and produce rain clouds, it's also possible for them to produce a storm system that will also repel a hurricane, right? Because the last few hurricanes, devastating hurricanes, always seem to steer clear of Florida. I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but the last few hurricanes that devastated the Caribbean and the Bahamas always seem to turn east right before it made landfall in Florida. And we know, we've been growing up um, watching hurricanes, experiencing hurricanes for decades. And we know that after the storm passes through Haiti, Cuba, Jamaica, the Bahamas, they would characteristically make landfall in Florida, causing a lot of devastation and flooding and destruction of property, etc. But I've been noticing like the last few years, as these hurricanes approach Florida, they suddenly have the urge to turn east, which is quite uncharacteristic of a storm that is like a volatile entity. It's a swirling mass of wind and rain and sometimes lightning. But for some reason, these storms just keep on steering clear of Florida. And so, as it came to my mind, I saw a video of some Jamaican vloggers making a few remarks about the storm. And this brought all of this to my mind. It's like, if they can create rain producing storms, it's possible that they can make tropical storms and hurricane force storms, right? And then it is also possible that when these storms are approaching an area that they don't want to actually experience this hurricane, they could just produce another weather system or front or whatever you want to call it that will be like a repelling pressure to force the storm to steer in another direction. And the last few hurricanes, I just noticed that there's always this storm front coming from the northern portion of America to repel the hurricane. And it can't just be a coincidence that while this is taking place, a hurricane is approaching the Caribbean. There's also some other storm system heading south towards the direction of this hurricane. So I said all that to say it's highly improbable that a storm that is menacingly strong with winds that are toppling buildings and uprooting trees will suddenly turn away from Florida every single time. Can you all remember the last time a hurricane passed through the Caribbean and then hit Florida. I haven't seen it recently. As a matter of fact, it's not even making landfall on America's east coast. It is just turning back in a U-turn away from America. So I just found it to be strange, and I just wanted to make a few remarks about this. I don't think it was a natural storm by any stretch of the imagination. And my thoughts and prayers go out to Jamaica for the loss of lives, livelihood, property, um, and their way of life. The destruction was incomparable, and we hope that all aid and assistance can be mobilized to assist Jamaicans experiencing the after effects of this catastrophic storm. But I just wanted to dispel the myth that rain producing clouds are only produced by nature. This is not the case. NASA has been able to do this for quite some time. The same engine that can lift a shuttle into the stratosphere and into Earth's atmosphere can also produce rain clouds. You've seen it every time they launch, you can see that it almost appears to be a cloud vapor, right? Except that this is being done with jet fuel, but they actually have a land based engine, as I will show you throughout this video, that not only produces clouds and vapor, this vapor then condenses into a rain cloud that behaves similar to any other storm that you've ever seen that occurs naturally. It becomes dark, begins to rain. You will also hear some thunder, see some lightning, all from a jet engine that produces water vapor and clouds. But family, let me know your thoughts in the comments below about all these dynamics. One love.